Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights Podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We're champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Lu Ngo, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights Podcast. My name is Joanna, and I'm so excited to be taking over for today's episode while your host Lou can't be here. But don't worry, we are in safe hands as I'm keen to dive into today's topic, which is creativity. So we're going to be looking at unleashing our inner artists and how fostering creativity can better our well-being. So joining us today is Svetlana Bykovec. Svetlana is a highly skilled and experienced senior creative arts therapist, and she's going to be helping me dive into today's topic. So hi Svetlana, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me on, Joanna.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure to have you on today. Before we dive into everything else, would you please tell me a bit more about what you do? How'd you get into your work?
How'd I get into my work? Yes, well, it was a bit of a calling, but I came to art therapy after I studied psychology many years ago. Didn't sort of mold with my sort of way I wanted to be in the world and work with people. So I then moved overseas for about 11 years, I think it was, maybe a bit longer. And but when I came back to Australia, someone mentioned art therapy, and it really sort of resonated with me. So at age 45, I went back to school, and it's just been a real joy in my life. I really enjoy what I do.
Yeah, and it sounds really amazing. I feel like with art therapy and creativity in therapy, it's so underrated and it's not talked about enough.
No.
But it's so incredible. And you were telling me about the work that you did while you were in America, and it sounds so amazing. Would you be able to tell us a bit about that? I just love it.
Yeah, so when I was working in America, I was involved very much in children's writing and illustrating, but most of the stuff that I did was actually mentoring and inspiring children book writers. So I would put on workshops with my colleague, my bestie, who's still around and who's still my bestie. And we used to put on these fantastic little workshops to sort of inspire and build the confidence and self-esteem, and really mentoring these new writers, into understanding their characters in their stories. So we'd give them all these different perspectives and different ways of looking at the world through different lenses, so that they really understood what their protagonist, who their protagonist was. So that's the kind of work I did. It was very creative, and it was very, I guess, thematic in a way, because we would often say, okay, you have to drink this potion or eat this cookie and you'll shrink or you'll grow, to gain different perspectives. So that's sort of what I did in America, because I was kind of there with my family, and like not really working because I was just as a dependent on a dependent visa at that time. So that's what I did. I sort of delved into my own creative sort of prospects, which was children's writing and illustrating, and then it sort of opened up a whole new world.
I love that. And what inspires you today?
Today, what inspires me, it's still, I guess it's very much still about people and about inspiring people, but now I'm working more in the mental health. So I've gone back to my psychology roots, but I've gone into creative arts therapy. So it was just that missing link, and that I guess that spark for me, because it really felt flat. My psychology degree just felt flat. And when I looked into arts therapies, it was like, yes, that's the missing link. And I kind of just threw myself back into it, and haven't looked back, and it is really about still working with people and helping support people, but now it's more about mental health and well-being. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited to dive into that a bit more later on. But before that, we have some get to know you questions in a
Yes.
section we have called Have You Met Svetlana? So my first one for you here is, what is your favorite book or something that you've recently enjoyed?
Yes, and something I read more than once. It's a book called The Alchemist by yes, you know it, by
so
Paulo
good.
Coelho.
Yeah.
And I think for me that really it's a book I came to probably in the last 5 years. I came across it, and I just it's just one of my favourite books now. I just love the message it gives, and it is about that sort of connecting and following the purpose and following, really having that faith in following your purpose and your dream, in order to navigating the hero's journey, which very much it is a hero's journey, and sort of really finding yourself transformed in the end, and living life joyfully, and that really is about our motto. The mission at Evolution Creative Arts Therapies is igniting joy and transforming lives. So it's just a beautiful little balance there.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love that book. I remember picking it up, and I was very young when I picked it up. I think I was about 14, maybe
Wow,
15.
fantastic. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this probably is not for me, because I was very in my fantasy YA sort of easy reads. So I picked this one up, and I was so surprised by the journey it takes you on. And it's not a big read at all. It's quite small, but there is a lot to take in. And by the end of it, you're like, wow, so simple. It follows this one person, but it's so amazing.
Yeah, it is a great book.
Oh, yeah. So glad you brought that one up. Oh, I love it so much. Perfect. My next one for you is there a movie that you've recently enjoyed?
Yeah, that was, I had to think about that, but really, I guess for me, it's always a go-to, and I always go back to watching this movie, and it's The Princess Bride. That's got to be the go-to. I don't watch a lot of movies per se. We do a bit of those sort of binge watching TV shows and that, but I'd say with the movies, and we went and saw it at the art gallery here, where they had the live orchestra doing the music as the movie.
Wow.
Yeah, so that I would say that would have been my last experience of an actual movie.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Oh, lovely.
And Carrie Ellis was there to kind of introduce it, and a little bit of giving us an insight into how it was being on set, and it was fantastic.
Oh, that's amazing. I love when actors show up to the movies or the cinemas while you're watching it. It's so amazing. I've never experienced anything like that, but that sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
Great. Next one here is, are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
No, I am not.
That's okay.
I'm not listening to any. I did used to listen to Shrink Wrap for a while, but I haven't sort of got it, but I am looking now into your podcast. So I guess in a way I have started listening to your podcasts. But only a couple, maybe 3 or 4 of them. I can't remember now, but so I will get into it more.
No, I'm the same. I used to be quite into podcasts.
Yeah.
I was listening to a true crime podcast quite religiously.
Yeah.
But I've gotten out of it, but I want to get back in. I feel like my attention span's really been limited recently.
Yes,
so I just can't sit there for too long.
The time.
Yeah, the time, exactly. I see an hour and 20 on something, and I'm like, oh, not for me.
But, just having sort of dived into a little bit, there's so many great things out there.
There are, and you learn so many things, and you
Yeah.
don't have to stick to one podcast and watch every episode. You can just find ones you like and then just watch that one.
So, you can ask me that question later on down the track, and maybe I'll say, oh, yeah, I listened to it.
We'll review. Great. I've got one more here, and that is, do you have a role model?
Again, that was a tricky one too, but I guess I have to go back to my parents, and particularly my mum. But I think they really taught me resilience because they've come from a war. After the Second World War, they migrated to Australia. So they've been through so much.
Yeah.
And they really knew how to live life full. We were pretty much bordering on poverty, really. We just had the little government housing when we were growing up. But there was always this sense of abundance at home. So they really knew how to live in the moment, and they really knew how to celebrate life. So that to me, I think, has given me my attitude in life and my optimism. And with Mum, I think she also really taught me how to just stop and listen and just be really present in little things like, particularly in nature. So I think that sort of connection with nature and, I think that's where that comes from. So I'd have to say my parents, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought really hard about that and I thought, what could I say here? But yeah.
Sometimes it's just as simple as the people that are closest to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Love to get into what we're here for today.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
So my first question for you is, what does well-being mean to you?
So I think with well-being, it's really about your day-to-day living in a joyous or calm or content way. I think that's well-being, when we're kind of feeling content about our life and not feeling stressed. And I think that's what well-being is. Being able to sort of, I guess, even just enjoy life.
Yeah. And I guess it's as simple as the word well-being, being well.
Being well.
Yeah, look at that. I feel like that makes it even more complex, because what does being well kind of mean? And I feel like it means something different to everyone.
Yeah, so being well is, look, I think for me, how I understand it is when I'm feeling well, I'm able to sort of think creatively. I'm able to enjoy and laugh and just be in a joyful way, just in the world.
Yeah.
I think I can. It enables me to connect with people. So when I'm not feeling well, it's kind of that sort of distancing and separating. And I think well-being has got something to do with connection too, because when we're in that space, that mindset, then we're kind of more open to others as well. And we're also able to, pass on a smile or pass on a nice word. But when we're not feeling, I think when you're not well, you kind of tend to shut off. Yeah.
Exactly.
So something like that.
No, that definitely makes sense. I feel like when you're feeling well, you're more open to what's around you. You're more open to accepting the experiences that, are all around you, because there's so many things you can experience and so many things you can do with life. But I feel like if you aren't doing too well, you're going to close yourself off to those things.
Yeah.
And then you're going to tell yourself that there's no hope. Or
that's right. You wouldn't try, would you? You kind of give up potentially as well. So, shut down, shut off.
Yeah, definitely. And do you feel like there are misconceptions around well-being?
Yeah, I think people, particularly with mental health, if you were to ask someone about, well, what does someone who has mental health challenges, what do they look like? They wouldn't say, a business person, in a suit or, going to work. They're fine. Well, not necessarily, because often it's underneath the surface. So people may say, well, the homeless person, well, they've got mental health, concerns or challenges. But it could be the young woman laughing and singing. She could actually have mental health challenges. So I think the misconception of how that looks is definitely, we kind of tend to think, they're okay, but they potentially are not okay, because what we sort of put on the outside, our mask we wear on the outside, could be really different to how we're feeling on the inside.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's where comparison is really important. Don't compare yourself to others, because you might might want to compare yourself to that person who looks really happy or looks like they're doing fine on the outside, but you don't actually know what's going on the inside.
No, you don't. You don't. There could be a lot happening underneath the surface. So,
exactly. And they just might be that type of person that doesn't want to show that to everyone else. They want to try and push through it, but you don't know that.
No, we don't. So that, I think, is a misconception, and that also that well-being is something that, you know, is this constant. I don't think it is. You know, for me, well-being is a little bit like we talked about the hero's journey. It's up and down, because there's going to be some days where we're feeling great and we're feeling on top of it and our mindset's there and we're getting things done and we're out there enjoying life and feeling really good about ourselves. And then we can have those slumps too that's for everyone. I don't think it's sort of we can't exclude anyone here. I think you have those days too where you kind of feel like it's just too hard. I can't do this today. Or you have that inner critic that's really loud in your head kind of saying, oh, you can't do that. Or the imposter syndrome as well, that critic that comes out and says, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. So I think well-being isn't this flat line. I think it's sort of oscillates, it ebbs and flows.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like when we think of well-being, we think of it as something that we always have. Like when you talk about well-being, it's like you're always doing well, or, you know, like we're always up, you know, keeping up our well-being. But for a lot of people, like, I don't think they can relate to well-being that much because they don't feel like they're doing as well. And to say that you are doing really well, it's a really hard thing to say if you don't mean it or if you don't truly feel that way.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, to have that authenticity around giving an answer, because how many times we say, how are you going? Oh, yeah, I'm good.
Oh,
I'm okay.
Oh, my gosh.
But really, if we pause and think about that, look, how do I feel fantastic today? Or do I feel, I just feel, I feel okay.
Yeah.
No, I feel shitty. Can I say shitty?
Yeah. We'll let it slide.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think there's that misconception too. We don't have to say we're okay or we're good. Maybe we're not, But then I wonder how that true answer will affect the person that just asked you the question.
Exactly. Like when I work in customer service, like people are like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, by default, I'm like, I'm good, thank you. And it's interesting every time I say that and I'm having maybe a bad day, I'll be like, what if I said, I'm not that great, or I'm okay? I wonder what they would say, because we're so accustomed to people being like, I'm good, I'm great, I'm fantastic. But that's not often the reality either.
No. Yeah. And how would they take that?
Exactly. They would be like, oh, you're not good? Okay. I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
You know, we're not used to confronting, mental health.
Yeah.
Like right there in the face, I feel like it's something that we hide, or, we talk about with select people like a therapist or, a mentor or a trusted friend or family. It's not really something that we like to put out there in the open.
Yeah. And imagine if we could all just be like really authentically ask the question, because I really want to know, rather than that sort of that scripted, yes, how are you today? And, how are you going? Rather than that scripted sort of answer and question, to sort of, I don't know, how would that look? And yet there are people, we're often walking past people who sit in the street, the homeless. And do we kind of stop and ask them how they're going? What's their story? No.
Yeah.
We kind of just walk by, keep going.
Yeah. And I guess that's what contributes to that mask, I guess. Like as soon as you step out of the house, you're like, who am I going to be today for the world? And what if we didn't have to do that? What if we could just be totally authentic? Like stepping out of the house. I don't need to think about who I'm going to be. I'm just going to be the same person as I was before I stepped out of that door, you know? That would be so cool.
It would be.
Yeah, and I reminisce on that a lot. Awesome. So I was wondering what role you think creativity now plays in well-being.
So with creativity in itself, it does, we know that it does reduce stress, it relaxes us, we can get into a world, especially with our imagination, kind of can take us out of our day-to-day drudgery into a world of imagination and play. I think play is really important, and a lot of the work that we do at the clinic I think there's an element of play underneath everything we do, because I think it just frees us up when we kind of step into imagination. We can use so many different modalities of the arts to sort of gain a better understanding about ourselves as well. But but you're talking about the well-being and creativity in particular. But so that's more, I think, with creativity we can just gain a different perspective about the same challenge in our life.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's also about regulation too. So when we're sort of involved in creativity, like if we're doing some visual work or we're working with clay as well. There's been a lot of research around clay and how our body responds, but we kind of regulate our nervous system. So we kind of get, if there's tension, you kind of squeeze, or you squeeze the clay, or you sort of spread the paint, or and you can kind of, there's a release happening in your body. So that's been shown as far as relaxation and kind of stress reduction with creativity.
Definitely. I can relate to that because I went to a clay, like a pottery class with like the wheel and everything. And I remember them saying, like, for the next couple hours, like, your mind is just going to be focused on exactly what you're doing, and you'll notice where your tension is. Like, are your shoulders all hunched? That's where all your stress is. And then how hard are you pressing against the clay? And I remember I was pressing so hard at one point, my clay flew into my friend.
Wow.
It like flew off the wheel, and I was like, oh my gosh. So not my calling, but it just made me realize how, creative therapies can be so enlightening, especially when you don't realize how stress might impact your anxiety or something like that. You feel it in your body when you're doing those kinds of activities.
Yeah, and there's so many different modalities to the creative arts. So yes, there's the visual arts, there's using clay, but there's also using narrative and using symbols and metaphor, dance, dance, movement, drama. So there's that sort of potential to change roles around a certain situation or experience that the client is, or we are feeling or going through, where we can gain that different perspective by using those different modalities too.
Yeah.
So
well, I'd love to ask, like, what the process is like. So a client comes to you and they've got this issue, and how do you work with creative therapies to sort of work through that with them?
Okay, so at the clinic we see clients age 3 up to 60, I think, 71. So it's open to, like, the demographic is huge. So we, depending on the age, so with children that come in, the really important thing is that play is about, teaching them how to play and use their imagination. So a lot of kids are on their phones and are on tablets and stuff like that. And they're not utilising their social skills as well when they're doing this. They're really retracting from life when they're involved in this. So of course, there's going to be those behavioural things that come up because I'm on this tablet all the time. So now I go to socialise with other kids and I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So when the kids come in and we evaluate, we will begin with play. So we have a drama therapist at the clinic, so they'll actually do some role playing and playing to sort of get the imagination active, understand boundaries, understand conversations, and all those sort of social skills that you need. So we build on that, and then when they're a little older, because if we've got a 3-year-old coming in, they're not ready for the visual arts yet. They're sort of, it's all about play. So then we can kind of get them into the visual arts where we'll work with them with paint and allow that kind of fun, because kids all love mixing paint, and I let them do that because it's teachers usually say, no, don't mix the paint. But that's fine. There's many shades of brown, by the way, many shades. So, yeah. So then they start building those they start mastering other skills. So then that builds self-esteem, that builds confidence.
Yeah.
So you're sort of building on one foundation, then you're moving on to the next step. And then we know that with self-esteem, that's really linked closely with engagement at school. So if we can get the kids sort of in that space where they're feeling confident, their self-esteem's boosted, then, they can go into school and be engaged at school because now I'm feeling good about myself. So they're the kids. And then we've got teens. And so the teens that we work with, often it is with the visual arts, but there are certain themes that we'll work through, because if we work with them as a group, there'll be themes. We'll go through identity, who we are, so working with things like self-portraits and working with masks, as we talked about, because we do have different masks in different situations, and just gaining an understanding of what we present to the world could be very different to how we feel. So we start looking at those kinds of themes with teenagers. And then, of course, you've got adults, and it just depends, again, on the diagnosis. But with adults, we can use all of the above, all of the below that I just said. But with adults, and with all our clients, it's always person-centered. So it really is about where the client wants to go. So if they're kind of delving into the visual arts, but they're kind of feeling stuck, we might move into narrative. We might move into sand play. We might move into clay, just depending where the client feels like, because sometimes with drawing, we do have a bit of it, particularly adults have that self-critic. I can't draw, I can't paint.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's about that sort of expression. And it's about them doodling and finding some meaning, or projecting what does my depression look like onto the page. Rather than being in it, we're kind of projecting onto it. So now I can look at my depression and it's not held in my body. It's there. So now it feels a bit safer. And then that's how we kind of start digging a little deeper with, okay, well, what's happening here? So, yeah.
Oh, it's a process.
It is. And I think moving from different modalities, if you have a concept of, you've got a rock and you see a rock and there's the rock and there it is. But now I'm going to pick up that rock and I'm going to turn it around. Oh, look, there's a crack at the back of this rock. And if I look underneath the rock, what's there? Oh, there's also stuff living under that rock. I mean, it's about changing a modality in order to change a perspective or to gain a different insight into the same challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And what are some of the psychological benefits to these sort of creative modalities?
Yeah, well, creating meaning, and the transformation. Like if I've been stuck with this challenge and now I understand it and I'm now putting meaning onto it, I can move forward. So yeah, it's look, it's pretty amazing when people get that moment where they sort of pause and they go, oh, that's what that is. And they kind of gain that understanding and meaning. And it really is about finding the meaning. It's not so much about we've got to unravel the past, all of the past. It's about really, well, what is it staying with me now? What's happening in my body as well? Because body work's so important.
Yeah.
Because if I'm feeling like I'm being triggered, well, why am I being triggered? What is it? And what's happening in my body? And so it's bringing their awareness not only to what's being projected here, but it's about understanding how they're responding, how the body's responding. So then we can start regulating ourselves. So, okay, I notice when I bring up this person's name, I'm really starting to, feel it in my body and I'm really starting to get anxious. So now what do we need to do to address that so that we don't sort of become overwhelmed and by it, that we can kind of now start regulating ourselves. So we'll give them some tools for that too. Like maybe we pause and then we might take 3 deep breaths. Maybe we'll stand up and walk around. Maybe whatever it is that they kind of will work out, what it is that I need to do. Maybe it's about folding that paper, scrunching it up, whatever it is, to just bring back the regulation. So, yeah. And then once we can find the trigger and understand it, and then be able to self-regulate, well, that's empowering too, because now I'm not going to be taken away by the anxiety or the anger.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it can be a less confronting approach as well, doing it this
Definitely.
way and
Yeah.
kind of seeing it arise through an activity you're doing. Like, for example, when I was talking about the clay, it wasn't this like instant moment of like, whoa, like it's all hitting me now, because that would have been overwhelming. But it was more just like over the like couple hours that I had in that session, just realizing how I was responding,
Yeah.
realizing my thoughts and all those kinds of things. It's really interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the sort of, I guess, you get the most benefit. Yes, creativity in itself and having a creative practice or doing, giving yourself the time to go do some pottery or painting is definitely beneficial.
Yeah.
But having a registered or qualified arts therapist leading you, or no, I wouldn't say leading, more guiding, is it can really, really sort of, you can dig deep with them and be safe, because they can kind of also monitor how you are responding, and you may not be aware of what's going on. So, and often you're not aware of what you're saying too. So I'm often writing keywords down and then offering that back to the clients, and they go, "Did I say that?" I go, "Yeah, you did." And it's like poetry. It's like, it's
Yeah.
incredible what sort of comes out when you're really in the process. But we've always got to gauge, even though we're alongside the clients and we are sometimes part of the process as well, you've always got to have a little bit removed to watch, to sort of keep them safe. So when you see that it's sort of, they're really getting dysregulated, well, we need to change it or pause or just, to sort of get them back into regulation. So, because sometimes you can get into it and it's like, can get very manic. So you have to kind of pull them back so they don't get totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, and it seems like a very safe space then to be able to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Great. And how does this all contribute to our overall well-being?
Well, and with creativity in itself, I think it gives us that little out from the stress of life. I always sort of recommend to many of the clients, keeping a journal, keeping a creative journal, and you don't have to use sort of pencils or pens, or pastels, whatever you want. You can use collage. You can sort of find words in magazines that really sort of uplift you or have some sort of value to you, and put them in. So, I mean, there's so many ways to do a journal, but it's a great way to kind of just reflect on your day or on an experience that happened, a dream potentially too. You might have this recurring dream, so might kind of just journal with it. But the idea of also just free writing about it, reflecting on the experience in a creative way. So again, whenever you're doing creativity, you're kind of removing yourself a little bit from it. So you're sort of doing images, or you're writing poetry, or you're just free writing. So you're kind of removing, you're not in it, you're kind of allowing it just to be creative, a little using your imagination and sort of stepping back a little bit, but to gain some meaning for yourself. I mean, I think meaning making is really crucial. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like when you can make meaning, but also sort of like make sense of that, it can really connect with you in like profound ways.
Yes.
And it helps you like see things in a different way, and you gain a lot of clarity through doing that.
Yeah. Yes. And usually you walk away feeling, like, like something you walk away generally feeling like something's been lifted.
Yeah.
It feels a bit lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And do you feel like the creative process is for everyone?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, definitely. I mean, I think we were, drawing in caves before we discovered language.
Yeah.
We were communicating with images. So I think it's innate to humans. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, that's what I say to. I'm not an artist. Yes, we all are artists. Yes, all of us.
At the root of everything.
Yeah.
A creation. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And in terms of like the connection between creativity and physical well-being, where does that intersect?
Yeah, so physical well-being, if we are constantly in stress and we're constantly anxious, I mean, that has physiological effects on our body. We know this. So if we're able to sort of have a release for ourselves in some creative way, I think that's what, it helps to regulate. It helps us to calm down. It helps us to sort of we don't want those stress hormones running rampant in our bodies. So, I think that kind of, and it could be like a distraction too. I mean, there's certain processes like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Zen tangles.
Oh, no, I haven't.
Okay, so it's just really, and it's a very focused sort of process, but it just switches your mind off. Like, I actually use this for myself because my mind is constantly going. But they're like a little card, and you just do all these repetitive patterns. Like, you just section off the paper or the card, and you just do these repetitive little shapes. And it just, because it's small and you do it with a little ink pen, it just really zooms in your focus into this. So it's a great way to just really switch the brain off. But clay's another one that's a great material to work with, because the minute you get your hand in clay, it's like a switch goes off. Your brain just gets shut down, and it's like you're all here.
I know, exactly. It's like the sensations, the textures, like it's really funny. It's really great. And I love how there's so many different sort of expressions, like drawing, a drama, like you mentioned, and clay. Like, there's so many different options.
So many. Yes. So, the different modalities work in different ways. So when we're sort of wanting to focus, we might look at those processes where it's sort of more fine motor skills. But then if you want to kind of get into the body more and really find out, like, what is an experience, because we often can, we can sort of work out a symbol or a metaphor. We can work out what it looks like, what shape it is, but getting it in your body and understanding how it is in your body is a whole different thing. So having a gesture or a dance can be completely, opening as far as what is going on with me. I think I've seen the greatest transformations where someone does this gesture and it just changes their whole perspective on the situation, and they'll go, oh, right, I get now why blah, 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 blah. But it's just, and I don't know how that actually works.
Yeah.
But I've seen it happen where they'll just change from one posture to another posture, and it just, something transforms in them. And there's this understanding of whatever it was that was sort of stuck with them. But yeah, and also I find, and there's a few books on this where they talk about, I think Peter Levine's written some books around, with the body holding it when we're traumatized, that the body holds it. And sometimes it's about releasing the action. The action wasn't finished. So potentially, I think he talked about, I think it was Levine, I hope so. But he talked about he was hit by a car, and there was an action of putting his arm up that he was able to do, and that sort of finished the process for him. Whereas it was stuck in his body. So what the body really wanted to do was stop the car, but it couldn't, and he didn't even have a chance to kind of put his arm out. So by sort of doing this action allowed that to pass through the body. Yeah, and he also talks about the trembling too, that with animals, they tremble after a traumatic event. And often we have trembling, but they try to stop that. They put blankets on us and stuff like that. But apparently trembling is part of the release process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we'll have to check those, Levine, because if it's not Levine, I'll feel really silly.
That's okay. Okay. But that's so interesting, looking at like human responses and like bodily responses as well.
Yeah. But understanding how, we can think, and we can, even when we're doing images, we're still using parts of the brain, but the body itself has wisdom, and, allowing our body to move authentically. So we've got to keep a safe space for our clients. And trust, and build that trust and rapport, because if want them to move authentically, they've got to trust us, and that can be really incredibly powerful. The movement, authentic movement, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And before we're having a chat about the universe.
Oh, yes, we were.
And I'd love to bring that into our discussion today. So I was hoping you might be able to lead us through that a bit.
Yeah, so I get, and we were talking about sort of a greater consciousness and raising everyone's consciousness in the world. And I think there's a lot of movements going around everywhere. There's a lot of companies and businesses that are working that way too. But a little bit about the idea of transforming, not just, and I guess that's what really inspires me with the work, is about, I look at it like a ripple. And so if we can support people and get them through their challenges, then they're going to be able to go out in the world, and then they'll have an effect on someone else in a positive way, or in a supportive way. And I kind of see that as a ripple effect going out into the world. But going back to the book, The Alchemist, when it talks about, following your true purpose and, sort of really having faith in your dreams and knowing what your strengths are, and going out and following that, and understanding that you may have that hero's journey where, we're going to have the obstacles come up against us, but how, if we are true to ourselves, how the universe actually conspires to make us flow, to find a way to make it happen, and to look for those signs and symbols that, we kind of are possibly out there, those synchronicity, those moments of synchronicity where, oh, gee, something happened and there was this sign or something that sort of led you to the next step.
Yeah, exactly. I find those moments really interesting because sometimes we can, see them as just coincidences, like, oh, that just happened. But they're things that are stopping you from doing something or encouraging you to do something so that the next thing can happen.
No, that's right. Absolutely. I think so. And it is that they're like, and they could be small. It could be a small sign, but if we're not listening and if we're not open to it, we're going to miss it.
Yeah.
But an experience I had was where I was driving past this sort of an old house, and I could see it said, there was a sign. It was a hospice for children, and I'd drive past it because I'd go past it to go to work, and I'd go, oh, I'd love to work there. I'd love to work there. And every time I drove past, I'd say that. And 2 years later, I was working there.
Wow.
So I don't know. What happened there? But I really, there's something in that where you really believe, or you really have this kind of passion about something or dream about something, and then all of a sudden it's like, like the alchemist. That the universe conspires to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like if you put something out there in the universe, they're going to give it to you back.
Yeah.
They're going to give that back to you.
Yes, yeah.
Because I feel like you just have to be open to what's being shown to you. And I feel like the one thing you can't do is you can't reject signs of things.
Yes.
Because what's meant for you won't miss you. And even if you keep denying the fact that, oh, no to that, no to that, no to that, it's going to find a way to come into your life, or it's going to find a way to happen or manifest or anything like that. But I love the universe theory.
Yes. I think we have to, there's so much that can't be explained. And I know, I am cynical in a lot of ways, but sometimes, I'm also open to just let it, just let the flow happen. And there is kind of a sense of, I guess, magic, or out there. I do have a fairy garden. I've got to own up to that.
Beautiful. Oh, that's so cute. I love that.
But I think that's a sense of play, and I mean I've done that very much for my grandson too. But it is that sense of play and the belief and what if, and I think it's important to have that. And I think for me, I have that sort of a little sense of playfulness and the belief. Well, what if?
Yeah.
What if? Because there's stuff that does happen and you kind of go, oh, okay, that's really interesting. So
exactly. And I feel like the only thing you can control is yourself, like the things that you do. And I feel like, yes, you can try and take control of things and, control how things are supposed to pan out. But I feel like, yeah, it is important to go with the flow, because the more you go through life with, that tunnel vision, the more you're not opening yourself up to all the things that are meant to happen for you.
Yeah, and you could be missing out on things happening right now if you're too much in the past or too much in the future. I think there was a character in the book, the merchant, that was like that. He had his shop, and he was always wanting to do the walk to Mecca, but no, he doesn't. And his whole idea was, well, if I go there, then what have I got left in my life? And that's it. My life will be over if I do that. So you don't want to look too much ahead, but because you could be missing stuff going on right now and opportunities right now.
Yeah, and it is a bit scary. It is a bit daunting because you're putting your trust in something that's not tangible, or you don't know what's going to happen, or there isn't a force that you can see in work, but you just have to trust that it's happening for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I always go back to the idea you can't see it, but you can't see the wind either, but yet you can see it having an effect all around.
Exactly.
That's what I did my master's on the movement, on all this movement that the wind does, it's, you can't see it, but you can see it if you look for it.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the wind isn't always there. You can't always see it, but then it shows up and then you're always like, oh, there's the wind.
Yeah, there's the wind.
And I guess that can be said with this. Like, you're not always seeing these things happening for you and for your greater good and your well-being, but then it'll show up and you'll be like, oh, it is there.
Yeah.
It just wasn't there for a bit, but it's back now.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Which is awesome. I love anything to do with that, because it just gives people something to put their faith into.
Yeah,
I guess.
It's hope, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you these opportunities that are sort of out there, if you're seeing them, it gives you hope.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with me.
Oh gosh,
that was
so welcome.
Fabulous. We've now got our practices and habits debrief. So here we're just going to ask you about practices that you use. So is there a practice you do to foster creativity?
Yes, to foster creativity. Okay, well, I do journaling on a regular basis. I do like that. I often use collage because sometimes it's a image I jump off. Like I might sort of be sitting with something, or I usually, when I'm kind of in those kind of sort of contemplative moods, and I'm kind of thinking, oh gosh, I'm tired, I'm this and that, and I'll sort of just flick through and I'll see an image. And don't know why, but I'll just tear it out and I'll start with that, and then I'll go through and I'll doodle around it, or I'll and then I'll start just creative, like just free writing with it. So I do that, but often if it's a big thing for me, if it's something that I'm feeling is really sitting in my body and it's like, oh, I'm just not getting over this hump, I actually have big canvases.
Oh, wow.
So I just love getting into the big canvases, and it's abstract for most of the time, but it's about, for me, I think I put on the music, because music I think is huge as well. The music can sort of change us a mood as well. But I'll just move through, like I just actually move, and I like the big canvas because it forces me to really move my body. So I never sit down when I paint. Even if it's a small canvas, I'm always standing up, because I think it's something about moving with the paint as well. That's what I do.
Yeah. And do you find that there are certain environments that are more conducive to your creativity?
Yeah, well, I have got like a back room that's sort of set up as a studio. So that's kind of a space that you step into and it's inviting that. But I find just being out in nature for me, I think nature has a huge impact. And sitting out there or either in my garden, particularly, and that's why, yes, it's a fairy garden, but it's kind of cool. It kind of feels, a bit mysterious. And things are hidden but it's the atmosphere of that
Definitely.
that sort of it just does. It sparks your imagination, so it gets me into that creative mood. Or of course, watching waves, things like that. But if you have a journal and you're out in nature, that just kind of just happens. It's like you're plugging into something in the universe.
Yeah.
So you're plugging into it, and it flows. It just comes. It just comes to you. So I think there's something about that sort of allowing yourself to just be open and sit with some, pencils or pens or a journal or whatever you want, but just actually allowing yourself, plugging into nature and then just allowing whatever comes through. Yeah.
Certainly. And
Yeah.
I feel like environments are so important. I'm the type of person where I get like certain vibes from different places that I go to, and like they really resonate with like my
Yeah.
emotions and stuff. And then you want to keep going to those places that make you feel those good, warm feelings. And I feel like that's important to tap into.
Yeah, definitely. And there's things too. I mean, if you, I'm just sort of thinking for just people who may not have or don't want to sort of buy up any art materials. That even if you go to a gallery, like go walk through a gallery, but actually just really just sit with a painting that resonates with you, and just start reflecting on that. Even just seeing what's happening in your body. You might hate it and you're going, oh, I really hate that painting or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But just noticing and being that kind of mindfulness. I mean, you can use other artwork to kind of connect with the creative vibe, I guess you'd
Yeah.
call it the creative vibe.
Certainly. And like
Yeah.
even if you're looking at an artwork and you're like, I have no idea what I'm looking at, like this makes no sense, like unpack that. Like, why
Yeah.
doesn't it make sense? It's two people standing there. Why doesn't that make sense to
Yeah.
you? You know?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always something to think about with artwork, even if art's not like your forte or anything like that.
No. And just noticing how your body is responding to it, because your mind might be doing one thing, but just take a moment and just see, well, what's happening in my body right now? I'm actually feeling like, I don't know, nauseous. I'm feeling getting butterfly. I don't know, but there could be a response your body is having to an image too.
Yeah.
We tend to ignore our bodies, and it could be very slight, but just wonder, if we took the time to sort of start to understand what happens to our nervous system when we actually come in contact with paintings or pictures.
Yeah. And it's definitely fascinating.
Yeah.
And how have you felt like this practice has impacted your well-being and perception in life?
Oh, well, definitely as far as well-being goes, it's certainly when I'm going into the little hero's journey and I'm sort of feeling, not so great. There's things happening in my life right now. That's really, for me, it's a real, it's where I go to the art making. And even before I studied art therapy, which came about, my mother passed away, and after she had died, I was obviously I was really down in the abyss there. So I started to paint. It just naturally came. I just started to paint. And I just started to get bigger and bigger canvases, and there's a progression of the artwork I did, where at the end I did this one, which was the biggest canvas I did, and it was like, oh, I'm actually okay. And that canvas was actually joyful. Like the feeling that I got, the sensation was joy. Like I got back in touch with happiness again, and which is interesting because before that I was doing a lot of writing.
Yeah.
And so this was I just fell into it. And then about that time, I found out about art therapy too. So, and then, the whole thing just, opened up for me. I stepped into studying art therapy.
beautiful. It's
Yeah.
a cycle of life.
It is.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us and like your practices as well, because I feel like it's so important to be able to relate to, what other people do as well. See how they do this stuff in their life too.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, because it's a part of, some people's daily life, which is so awesome.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess I feel really fortunate to be doing what I'm doing, because it's really about igniting that spark in people, and really getting them in touch with creativity. So from people who feel, I'm not creative at all. So particularly with some of our groups, it's more about connecting into creativity. So they walk away saying, I can do this, and it feels great to do this, and I feel really good after. I just feel so confident. So I'm really fortunate. I found my calling.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
and I love to hear that for you. That's really great. Well, to round off today, I'd
Yes.
love to end with our open mic section. So here, it's just a space for you to talk about anything that you would like to. So I'd love to hand it over to you now.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, just trying to think. We sort of covered so many things, but I guess I suppose. Going back to the creative arts therapies and the idea, the universe, and that whole idea of consciousness, and where I've landed at Evolution Creative Arts Therapies, that's a story in itself, how that happened. But I really fell in love with my CEO's vision, and it was really, well, simple but impacting, igniting joy and transforming lives. And I thought, yeah, that's what it's all about. This is what the work's about, because people are stuck. They have these diagnoses, and they're kind of like, oh, I can't do that. I have ADHD. How many times I've heard that from kids? I can't do that. I have ADHD, or I'm bipolar. I can't do that. And then changing that mindset, all about changing it and showing them their strengths, and the idea behind looking at, we know what we can't do, but looking at what can we do. Yeah, and the mind, that kind of the neurodivergent mind of someone on the spectrum or ADHD, but what can you do that's amazing? You can multitask. You can do, like, there's a lot of positives in thinking like this or having that kind of mind. So we're really, that's why I came on board with eCAT, is because it's about really getting people unstuck and looking what they can at their potential and looking at their strengths. And look, we understand diagnosis. We're not ignoring diagnosis, but that's not all of you. That's a part. Yes, you have that diagnosis, but let's look at your strengths and really build on that. And that's the vision. That's the vision of transforming, the mental health and how we work with clients, and really giving them that opportunity to grow and to find what their potential is, because the potential is your passion, what you're really good at, without having to think about it. What are you good at? Oh, I'm good. I like numbers, or I like, I don't know, I like drawing, or I like whatever it is that they like. I like animals. Well, okay, let's go with what it is that you find yourself in flow with, and follow it. Because often families, particularly kids, if the family's a doctor, well, I have to be a doctor, but maybe that's not what they're naturally meant to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like that feeling of being stuck and always focusing on what I can't do is where people often lie. And that's kind of what stops people from doing a lot of things in life. But
that's right.
Being able to have those things where you can focus on what I can do and what is in my control is so important as well.
Yeah. Yes. And what is meaningful to you? What is it that what is it that brings you joy? What makes you joyful?
Exactly. And I feel like a lot of people can't answer that question, or they just don't know, like, what am I passionate about? Some people don't know that, and I feel like it's so important to be able to commit to finding that, because I feel like once you find that, then the world just becomes so much more clearer as well. And you're able to really enjoy that journey, and go with the flow and be open to whatever's happening because you have your passion.
Yes.
And that's concrete and that's going to be there and ultimately contributes to your well-being as well.
Oh, without a doubt. Because you're being your authentic self.
Yeah.
You're being what comes naturally to you. And I think that's what we kind of forget about. What is it? And not everyone's going to be an engineer or a doctor. So sometimes the kids are there's a lot of pressure for kids in schools to sort of succeed in certain things. And there's a great analogy of, you wouldn't, if a goldfish was asked or told to climb a tree, that goldfish is going to continually fail and feel really stupid and have really low self-esteem because I can't climb a tree. But what is the goldfish natural is naturally for them to do is to be in water and to swim. So that kind of analogy of that often we might be sort of channeled into a certain way of being, like the shepherd.
Yes,
in
exactly.
The Alchemist, or do we take a risk and do we follow what really feels true for us?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Svetlana, for coming on the show. I've had so much fun chatting about this topic with you because I just don't get to do it all the time or at all, really.
Yeah.
So I've had so much fun. So thank you again.
Oh, you're so very welcome, Joanna. It's been great.
I know, it's been so much fun. I've really enjoyed myself. And for those of us who want to find out a bit more about you, where can we go after this?
Well, I think I sent over my LinkedIn and my Instagram as well as Evolution Creative Arts Therapies. I think you find them also on Facebook or on our website. You'll learn a little bit more about the clinic and who we are. But the team is amazing there. We have a lot of fun, and it's a great space. Yeah, and we have fish that don't climb trees; they swim.
Ooh, that's really great. Well, there you go. I feel like that's all the motivation you need. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again.
You.
And to everyone listening, thanks so much for tuning in. And if you missed that, don't worry. We've got Svetlana's details in the description below as well. But we'll see you guys next time.
You have been listening to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights Podcast, produced by the Wellbeing Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website, we.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Lungo. Thanks for tuning in.